I want to also go back to the point made of this is the perfect time in the world to reimagine education and reimagine teaching and the classroom. So just taking that dramatic reimagining of how educators teach and interact with students, what are some easy first steps that teachers can take as they're thinking about starting school again in the fall, to really do right now to change their thinking and help their students feel loved and understood?
So you asked for an easy one, but I'm going to go ahead and start with not an easy one. The first thing we really have to do is look at location. Where are we educating kids? And if we're putting students who have challenging behaviors in a single room down the hall, we are setting ourselves up for a school system that will reify these stigmas, these challenges. So the first step is not an easy step, which is we have to look at our school structures and we have to look at real ways that we have segregated and separated. And I use the word segregated on purpose because of the racial underpinnings, right? We look at Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, and it said you cannot segregate human beings based on race. And yet we feel perfectly okay segregating human beings based on disability. And Kate and I are really, really, really against those practices as a whole.
Another macro aspect about what we hope educators can do as they're reimagining school is that we don't want to take away things that are so important to students because of challenging behaviors. So often the first thing we do is take away recess, take away, eating lunch with your friends, take away the things that students need for that belonging and that connection and that feeling of value in school. So we also want that at a macro level to flip for educators. How do we, instead of taking away, give them what they need? They're communicating something to us with their challenging behavior. Like Julie said, it's our job to decode what that communication is and to figure it out and then to give them what they need. And there's an example that I'm thinking of in the book, actually, these two teachers that we know and work with who are really fabulous. They took a really radical approach in their school district, which was instead of disciplining their students with the most challenging behavior in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they flipped it and they turned them into leaders. And they created a program called Teachers in Training. And they got little badges that said, Mr. Smith or Mrs. MacLeod. And they went in and they supported kindergartners and first graders in the classroom. So they flipped this approach of, instead of taking away something from these students like recess or suspension or expulsion, they're giving them leadership skills. They're training them to support other students. And what they found was radical, that these students were now kids who did not want to come to school, who were just, waiting in the car so they didn't have to go, are now the first ones in the door. They're smiling, they're ready, they want to be a part of school. And so I think that that's another way we want to think about that macro and that micro level, what it is, how do we reimagine that, and how do we take those steps to approach what that looks like in school.
So I'll now jump to sort of a micro step, which is teaching with gratitude and kindness every single day. So one practice that Kate and I often talk about is gratitude. And I'll use this biology teacher that I worked with. He came to one of our workshops and he said, "Julie, I sat in the back with my arms crossed. You might have remembered me." And I didn't, because that's not an uncommon situation. And he said, "I sat there with my arms crossed thinking, are you kidding me? I teach biology. How does kindness, how does gratitude have anything to do with what I do?" And I had made them leave with a practice and they had to report it back into their principal. So he said, okay, so I took the 21-day gratitude challenge. And all that it meant is every day, all the students put in a gratitude into the jar about the class, and then he would pull them out and share them. And he said, 22 years of teaching, I've never done anything so powerful. I didn't realize that I have the opportunity to create a classroom of learners that's connected, because I was so focused on content. I forgot that piece. It was just like the most beautiful email I had gotten. And that's a small thing, right? It was a 5-minute practice. Every student got a strip of paper, wrote their gratitude for the day. The gratitude could have been for the teacher. It could have been for any other student in the room or an idea they learned. And that was just so quick, so easy. So we do in this book talk about the micro to the macro. And the macro stuff we cannot let go of. We cannot stop thinking about. If we have kids segregated and down the hall, we don't have an inclusive system. And so this book really encouraged us to do both at the same time.
We're hearing a lot of folks use the phrase, we want to go back to normal. and we're going to return to normal. So we'd love to hear your take on what that normal is for some of the students that challenge educators, and what we should really be thinking about when we think about reopening schools and returning to normal.
It's such a great question, and something that really is grounded in this work and this book, because what often happens when we think about this concept of normal is that it marginalizes students based on issues of difference. So students based on perceived ability, behavior, race, language, gender, and thinking about going back to normal means thinking about going back to marginalizing students. And so what we want to do is to really grapple with these ideas and instead approach a normal in a new way that is more equitable, more effective, and more loving. And that includes the way we think about students with challenging behavior. So we want to think about all students are going to have extremely diverse ways of behaving, of achieving in academics, of communicating, of moving through the world, of having social skills, and all of these apply to the way we think about behavior. And so we want to make sure that we're valuing and we're expanding our understanding, that we're thinking about diverse ways of behaving, moving, thinking, communicating, being, and loving in our schools.